First of all, welcome Tom. Great to have you with us at SportsX. I know myself and all the management team are really excited to have you on board with us. And it's obviously been a long time coming. We started discussing the possibility of you joining us a year or so ago. So can you just give us a little bit of a backstory as to how you got involved with us and your sort of short to mid-term plans with the company?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me. A year ago we sort of met through a mutual friend who is a manager and coach for SoccerX, William. And he was a friend of the family, and then he just said that you were thinking of starting a Rugby X type thing, and put me in contact with you. And at the same time, I was sort of thinking, maybe I'm coming near the end of my career. What am I going to be doing? And I sort of want to stay in the game. I want to, give back to what's given me so much. I was in my head, I was thinking of ways that I could, maybe approach some schools or do something similar to what SportsX really is. And that sort of, it almost felt like the universe was just bringing us together. It's a year ago now, but it's about to kick off.
No, we're really excited, and obviously we've got programs rolling out over the next few weeks, and the session plans you put together look great. So we're really excited for the term and the years ahead. And I guess we're coaching lots of younger age children, sort of primary school ages. So take us back on your rugby journey in those early years, and what are your first memories of rugby and sports in general?
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago now, but I suppose I started back in New Zealand in Christchurch, 5 or 6 years old. It would have been my first rugby team that I was a part of. Rugby's a massive thing in New Zealand. I grew up, my dad was an All Black, so it was almost like rugby was a part of our family. And I just went along. Obviously, just loved the game. Like, it's just all that New Zealanders, there's one sport in New Zealand, and that's really rugby. I just really enjoyed it. I love playing sports. I played lots of different sports as well: cricket, rugby, just whatever, golf. I just loved mucking around outside and growing up with any sport really. It was just a lot of fun, and from there it's just I've kind of never stopped.
Brilliant. And obviously with you mentioned your dad being an All Black. Did that make you want to follow his footsteps, or was there more pressure to follow the rugby side of things, or was it just something you naturally enjoyed as you tried different sports, or was it just a mixture of both?
Probably a mixture of both. I think, for me it was my dad being an All Black was quite, it didn't feel like anything special. He was just my dad. We didn't grow up like where my parents were putting pressure on me to be an All Black. If anything, they were worried about there being pressure, and they tried to, take it all off me and be like, you don't have to play rugby, you can do whatever you want. But I enjoyed the game. Like, it was just like a lot of my friends were playing rugby. It's just what you do in New Zealand. On a Saturday, you just want to, just go and play a sport. And in the winter, it's generally rugby. In the summer, it was cricket. And that's just kind of how the years went by. But I suppose as time went on, there was this sort of pressure, like a lot of not really family, but people around us, would always make comments like, "Oh, Tom, you want to be an All Black one day?" It felt like, and I feel like that's probably where a lot of that sort of pressure maybe just started, maybe from outsiders talking about me being a rugby player, and I kind of felt a little bit trapped at some points, but it's worked out all right.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely worked out all right for you. And I guess in those early days, I guess your dad would have been a massive influence on you with rugby, but did you have anyone else that stood out, like coaches or people that were involved in those early years that you really sort of learnt a lot from and looked up to?
I did. There was lots of support. Like, New Zealand has lots of, I'm sure it's the same in Australia, lots of great club coaches, great people, like, they're doing it for nothing. They're coming down and training kids, like, and it was just, that was just the club scene, and it was really important, for that growth. But I was just lucky because I just had my dad. Like, I didn't have any brothers. My dad was, my brother and my dad. And if I look back on my career, like, he was the one person that I had to be able to go and pass with, that I had to go to the field and kick with. He's the only one I can think back and go, he was the biggest influence. And not from him wanting to do it, I needed someone to pass with, and I was like, well, Dad, you're the only one. My sisters weren't, they were a bit of tackling practice from, every now and again, but it was my dad was the one that, he had all the knowledge, he had all of the skills, and he kind of just like, we were just mucking around like a father and son do. And then, it was just sort of carried on from there. But I always when I look back, my dad was the one person that I really learned everything from and trained with through all of those years.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that's a massive thing. I remember, growing up and playing soccer with my dad, wanting to go out and kick the ball with him with just the most basic things. And I feel like that kind of thing is definitely dying out of sport in lots of ways, with so many more organised sessions and people with that perception that you have to be doing something organised and professional to actually be developing. How much of an impact do those little moments play in your development?
I think it's just, those are like the people talk about like 10,000 hours to become a professional. Like, those are the hours that I find when I look back, they're the most important. Just like constant touches on the ball, constantly getting outside and just, mucking around. You're not like stuck inside on a PlayStation. I used to always just be outside, like, and getting those touches on the ball, those kicks at the park. Like, and one thing like that I look back on, I'm very thankful for, is that my dad, he was like, he never ever said no. Like, he would come home, he'd be tired from work, and I had no idea at the time, but being a father now, I like, you get home, you're tired, and then my kids will be like, oh, Dad, let's go, like, oh, come on, let's go have a kick. And you're like, how sometimes you really don't want to, but my dad never said no. And I now bring that into my, as a father now, like, I always try to never say no to those moments, because for me, like, that was the development of me becoming, the player I am now, is those touches, those hours that he sacrificed and spent coming out with me when he probably didn't want to, when it's raining, whatever, all of those moments, like, and I'm sure he enjoyed it too, but it was just like, there's times when he just never said no, and I was really lucky because I have 4 boys, so they have brothers. They're constant. I could send them out and they just play together. But I didn't have that growing up. I only had my dad, and I was really lucky that he gave me that time. Yeah,
no, that's brilliant. And I definitely think it's so underrated, the touches you get just in those little training sessions and they're fun. And I guess probably from that, I don't think you had to be persuaded to go out and practice either, by the sound of it. It's something you wanted to do.
No, it was exactly, I just wanted to, like, every time after school I'd just go to the park. It was just like a fun thing for me to do with my mates. As I got older, had friends that wanted to do the same thing. That's just what we did. It's a little bit different now, like, everyone's got phones, everyone's got like PlayStations, like back, and I didn't really grow up with those sorts of things. So it was just natural to go outside. Like, that's just what you did. And if you stayed inside for too long watching TV, your parents would kick you out. Like, whereas now it's very different, like TV and computers and iPads. It's like, it's a very different, there's a lot more things to sort of, that go against going outside. But those are the moments that I think are so important growing up, for young kids. Like, if you want to get better, those are the hours that set you up for later in life.
And that's it, because we have this conversation quite a lot with the managers, and I have it with parents, and they say, my child doesn't want to practice or whatever sport it is outside of the regular sessions, and the same with phones and computers and whatnot. And that's why I feel like what we do is so vital, because it's very clear that you developed a passion for rugby at an early age, and then in turn you wanted to practice. You probably got more competitive with it. Whereas I think that those little steps that actually make a lot bigger impacts on players' career are lost. We want to almost miss out those fun stages and those introductory stages and go straight into, I want to be a winner. I want to be a professional. But actually, you have to I feel like you have to grow to love something before any of that. Would you agree?
100%. Like you see it a lot these days. Like parents want, often it's the parents that want their kids to be a professional from day dot. But I'm a big believer you got to like let your kids find the passion within the sport, let them grow to learn, practice themselves, and and then then you can feed that passion, and then as a parent you can support that and find ways to maybe with training sessions or something, just add to the passion that they already have. But they're only going to give up if it's not their passion. It'll just be a short-term thing that they get sick of and they throw it away like a toy. You've got, and that's one thing, because even now I have to practice, and it never stops. So you've got to have a love for the game. Like you cannot just, it's not just a job, or it's not just an activity. It's got to be successful. I feel like you've really got to find something. You've got to have something more than, just showing up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it has to come from within, as we just touched on. And that's something you touched on, parents. And I think we see that quite frequently. You hear comments, if a team gets beat, or if a child doesn't play well, they haven't got that winning mentality, or they haven't got this or that. And you think, well, these things come from, first of all, loving it and wanting to practice, and then caring, because obviously if they don't play well, if you don't care, you're not going to go away and want to practice more. But if you actually care and you love the sport, you're going to go, well, actually, I've got beat today, I didn't play well today, but I'm going to go and practice on my own. Whereas I think that's lost somewhere along the line, and it's all blaming referees, blaming coaches, blaming everything, apart from the fact that, well, actually, that particular child might not be as into the sport as we as parents want them to be. And I think there's that real that real hard part of junior sport that we see, and trying to overcome that can be a challenge at times, and helping people see it from both sides, that actually the winning is just a byproduct of all of the things that lead us there. It's not just a result of telling a child you have to want to win, because they need to understand the why, and actually need to find that in themselves.
100%. And growing up, I wasn't like that super competitive kid that like needed to win everything. Like there's actually not many kids out there that are really like that. Like they have that killer mentality. Like being a father now, I can sort of see both sides of it. Like I sort of notice how other parents are with their kids, and and all of them, even my kids, like they're all completely different. Like I've got one kid that's super competitive. He has that killer mindset. I don't even know where he got that from, because I don't even think I've got that now. Like I don't even think I ever developed. Maybe it's from my wife. And then I've got another kid who's just loves having fun. He's not so serious about it. He still loves sport, but it doesn't, it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to have, like, I'm super competitive, but like in a different way to someone that's, needs to win every single thing they do. Like I'm competitive in the moment, but I'm not gonna moan or, have a pack of sad if I lose, or because I know that, like I'm trying my hardest at that time, but if I'm not good enough, then I wasn't good enough at that time. And kids develop, you do develop that competitiveness. But growing up, my family was all about just having fun. Like my dad just always said, even to this day, like he'll still send me a message before the game, just like, make sure you have fun. Like I want to see a smile. Like my dad sends me, a 30-year-old like man, a message like, make sure you have fun. Like I want to see you smiling out there. But it makes me feel like that's not what it's all about. Like, there's more to sport. Like we've got to enjoy it. And if you have that like mindset of, that killer mentality every single time, like you've got to find enjoyment as well to be able to put yourself through, all of the trainings, all of the, the times that are harder. Definitely. You need to have some enjoyment. So I'm a big believer for kids growing up, like it's all about just having fun, building the passion for the game. And then when you find that they're really they're finding, that they are into one particular sport or whatever it is, then you can like help to fuel that. Like your goal as a parent is to support your children, not tell them which way to go. You've got to fuel their fire.
Yeah. So you're quite happy for your four boys to choose the direction they go with sports? Yeah,
like I love sport because I think it just, you have there's so many positives from sport, and especially team sports and, different sports, pool sports. Like I kind of want them to have a big, broad mix of sports. Like I want them to surf, I want them to play soccer or rugby, I want them to, learn a ball sport like tennis and just find out what they love and what they're interested in. And then from there, I'll just hopefully fuel whatever or help them, guide them, whatever they're interested in.
Yeah.
But I think sport's such an important thing, like especially these days, like to get outside and to just for your general health. It's a great thing, and like all the little things, like especially in team sports, you pick up, there's so many different personalities. You're constantly learning.
Yeah.
That not everyone's like you.
Yeah.
Like it took me years to realize that not everyone thinks like me.
Yeah.
But like I'm in a professional team, and like one guy, says it how it is, and one guy's, so you can't really be too hard on him. So there's so many different like ways that you learn about different people and bringing people together. It's super important.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I think that's applicable to all ages, because we've seen your two oldest boys come to our clinic last week, our soccer clinic, and obviously you've been in Japan for the last couple of years, and you said they've been doing some training there, but just seeing them just go straight into what we were doing and mixing in with the other kids and enjoying the skills, and the skills are obviously transferable, whether it's completely different language, and they just got it straight away. And it's just amazing, that integration and at sport just at those younger ages. So no, it's brilliant. Then I guess I think all the way through sport, it's made up of 4 key factors, I think, whether it's physical, tactical, technical and psychological. At what stages do those 4 aspects become more prominent, would you say? So we'll start at the younger ages, and from sort of, let's say 8 to 11, what do you think the key aspects at those ages are?
I think the first one I can really think of is just the technical side. Like that's where you develop your ball skills, your, like we said before, those touches. That's how you become more skillful, is from a younger age. Like if you can pack all of those thousands of hours that you need to apparently do, but it's probably true.
Yeah.
But those are the hours that make up the technical side for me, because like I didn't have to. It's not like, it's very rare that you get a player that comes out of nowhere, at 18 and goes, I want to be a rugby player with no ball skills. It's very difficult to upskill them in a short period of time. Like it can be done, but it's just more difficult. The subtleties of how you pass, like if you're learning that skill, it takes a long time. Especially to be at like the top levels, you need to have it'll be the same with soccer. You can't just show up and at 18 and be like, I'm going to be a professional soccer player. Exactly. You need all of those touches, all that time, understanding of the game. And I suppose like tactically that helps as well. Through that time, you understand like, where you need to be tactically, how the game is played. Yeah. You probably don't realize it, but like, all the hours of watching footage on TV, like for me growing up, it was watching the All Blacks, watching the Crusaders, Canterbury. All of those hours that I spent watching those games was tactically preparing me for my future in the game. And it would have been the same for you in soccer. Like you know where you need to be, like what your role is in the team, like what certain positions have to be able to do. And tactically, I think a lot of that starts just from a young age. You're just watching
subconsciously.
And it's not something you have to sit down and do. Hey, we're going to do some book work on like how the game is played and how what parts of the field we need to be in. But it's just, I do believe that that's obviously where we start.
Definitely.
So I mean, growing up, I think those are the 2 main things. I don't think psychologically you want to be talking too much. Like for me, I'm a real simple person. I think it's all about having fun and taking away all the other aspects of the game, like just enjoying it. And then those things start appearing later.
Definitely. And when did you start playing like competitively? Obviously you started a community club or local club. When did you go into a more professional setup?
I kind of made some of the age group teams, like it was like Canterbury under 14s, 15s. Like I missed out a couple of years, and then I ended up making, I suppose my career really kicked off when I made New Zealand under 20s. So that was like the first time where it was like a proper, it was a full-on competition. Like we went to Japan and played in a competition there, and then from there I think I was involved in the academy in Canterbury, which is like a training group where you just sort of learning these skills with better coaches, and that you're just playing club rugby on the weekend. So yeah, like it kind of, and then 2011 was my first NPC rugby team, like they're playing for Canterbury. So yeah, that was my first year.
Yeah, oh, nice. And you mentioned there that you missed out on a couple of selections. Obviously, at the time, probably devastating. But do you think that helped shape how you then progressed on the back of those rejections?
Yeah, super important. Like a lot of people put emphasis on like, being in the under 13s, 14s, 15s. But when I look back at my career, like everyone I played with at those age groups, no one made it. The guy, and even when I missed out on the team and the guys that made that team, like they didn't make it in rugby. So there's a lot of emphasis and there's a lot of pressure on making those teams. And, I was like, I was, pretty gutted not to make those teams, but I don't know, it was like I had a long-term goal. Like I didn't, even growing up, I always was like, I just, whether I don't know it was from my, like being a, son of an All Black, but I always had this vision, like I wanted to be an All Black, like that was the goal. So I was just like, it didn't really deter me from training, or I just kind of had a long-term goal, like that's where I'm going. I didn't make this team, I'll try and make it next year. Like it didn't stop me from playing, but as a parent, it's not important because those aren't the years that you make it. And if I was kind of thinking about it the other day, like a lot of the best rugby players, and I'm sure it's, might be similar, and I'm sure it's similar in other sports, like it's not true that, if you have to make every team to be a successful professional. And in New Zealand, a lot of our most successful rugby players weren't in any of those teams and became the best in the world. Like Richie McCaw's, he's a country boy. I'm assuming he wasn't in like rep teams growing up. Same with Dan Carter, like he was a country boy that only came into town for his last year of school. And like, so they weren't in those teams. Like, how is there a real direct, how does it transfer into professional rugby? It doesn't always. I'd actually say it's almost the opposite, because those kids get, they're told they're awesome. They're told that they're the best, and often it's the guys that are just chugging away in the background. Like, maybe they've got the long-term vision, but they know that, eventually when you start hitting around 18, 19, 20, that's when it counts.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you hear a lot of top coaches talk about players, and that a lot of the top players have overcome adversity at one point in time in their career, and I guess at those times your family would play a big impact. Your dad having come through, probably done it all before. Like, how did that sort of reaction when you obviously went home and you talked about the reasons why you might have not been selected, how much did that play a part in your sort of positive reaction to it? Because I know that lots of us, we like to, instead of look at ourselves, we like to go, well, that coach obviously prefers them because they play for X, Y and Z team, or they go to a certain school, or my face just didn't fit with him, and find lots of excuses as to exterior reasons why we didn't make it, rather than actually probably at this stage he was a better fit for that team than I was. So how much of a part did that play in your mindset moving forward?
Yeah, like I've said it before, but I was super lucky. Like I had super supportive parents. Like it was just like they just wanted to support me no matter what. Like it wasn't a big deal. We didn't make excuses. Like if you didn't make something, well, oh, that's all right. Like, we'll try again next year. Like, it doesn't matter. Like it's not a big deal. So I just kind of had that growing up all the time. It wasn't really, yeah, we definitely didn't make excuses. And you kind of do see that these days, like everyone's blaming someone else. But like ultimately, like if you weren't good enough, like often, more times than not, you're not in the team for a reason. But people just don't want to hear the real reason. Maybe they aren't good enough, but they don't want to believe that that's the reason why. But yeah, like I was lucky. I just had great support, and my mum and dad weren't making excuses, which helped me not to make excuses. Because when your parents are making excuses, as a kid, you're like, oh, that's an easy way to say like why I didn't make a team. So yeah, I suppose it's an easy out, like to say that.
Did they ever give you any home truths, or were they quite constructive with it?
My old man was really like supportive. Like he very really, like I had to like ask him if there was like they're blinded by their love for me, but and they're biased, but they they didn't really go down the negative path much. Like, not to say I don't know if that was a good thing or not, but like I think it worked, pretty well for me in some parts. Like, because I just never had that negativity.
Would he tell you if you had a bad game?
Oh, I think, but then you would always be like, but I was super hard on myself. Like, that's probably one thing why he didn't do that, because I was so consumed with being perfect that I was just terribly hard on myself. Like, I'd be devastated if I dropped a ball, and I would be like thinking about it and talking about it like after the game. Like, I just couldn't. I needed to be this like perfection. Like, everything just had to be. Yeah, probably didn't really help me a lot, but in some ways it did, because I had this like super. I just wanted to be everything to be perfect. I couldn't think of it any other way. But yeah, so they probably saw that and were like, hey, what about this part of your game? You're not even talking about what you did well, or they would just really find a way to make me sort of, be happy and support me.
Definitely, and having that sort of perfectionist attitude and that driven mindset, because obviously when you're going through adolescence and trying to break into senior teams, playing quick called up in the 20s, it's not just the physical. We went through those aspects earlier of, I can kick it this accurate, I can pass it this accurate, I can run this fast. It's so many other things that come into it. Like, at what stage did that mindset really then set you in front of people that you're fighting for the same position with, and when did you see that come to fruition in terms of call-ups to the senior teams for the first time?
Yeah, I suppose it's a hard one, because like I was just so focused on myself, and it wasn't until like maybe like when I started making like the under 20s, that was probably the first one that maybe I was like, oh wow, I'm actually like good enough. Because I kind of, I always wanted to be perfect, but I always had this doubt in my mind of, am I good enough? I don't think I'm good enough. I was really like quite down on myself. Like, I don't think I deserve to be here. At the same time, I'm trying to be a perfectionist. So it's really like this awkward paradox. But I suppose I made that team, and it was sort of like, and even going into that game, I was like, I was really like, I didn't think I was going to make the team. Like, I was sort of like, I don't think I'm like one of the best in New Zealand. I was like, surely there's way better people than me. But I kind of went there, and I was like, we did some skills and stuff, and I was kind of like, I felt a lot better than, I was actually really surprised at how poor the skill work was.
Well, how good
but I was sort of like, but there were a lot of drop balls, and I was like, man, I kind of just went into this envisioning everyone to be like perfect and amazing, and like there was a lot of drop balls, and I was like, man, this is like, I can do this without dropping the ball. This isn't that hard, and kind of gave me a bit of confidence. And then I played the game, and I just sort of probably had one of my better games like ever. Just things just sort of clicked, and I just, when I needed to, it just happened for me. And then I ended up making the team, and I was like, oh my God, I did it. And I don't even know, like, that was kind of like the one moment where I was like, wow, it's sort of coming together now. Like, all of those years where I wasn't sure, like, I'm starting to get a bit of belief here. Not that I had a lot of struggles with my belief through the years, but that was one moment where I thought, I'm not too bad.
It's amazing. You can take it back to almost individual instances that can almost make or break. And
for sure.
And with that, obviously, you would have been selected instead of in front of probably thousands of other people that wanted to get that spot and play in your position. How fine do you think the line was between you and the person that was on the bench behind you and the one that missed out on the squad behind that? Like, how fine is that line between eventually making it and not making it, and what are the differences? And because in my experience, they can be quite fine.
Yeah, for sure, it can be fine, but I don't feel like it's one moment and that's it. Like, I do feel like perseverance is such an important thing. Like, some guys think if they don't make this team, it's all over. I might as well give it up. But like, I kind of like, when I first started, I actually, coming out of school, I made it was called the pre-academy, of before you made the academy, before you then were hopeful to become a player for Canterbury and the Crusaders. So I made the pre-academy, and it was just a bunch of like 18, 19-year-olds. And like these guys were all these superstars out of high school, like all the big names. And I didn't even go to a school that was a rugby school. My school, came like near the bottom of the table in the top league. And all of these guys were like, the best. I was like, man, these guys are good. Like, they're way more talented than me. But I was like, I'm just going to like give it my best shot and see what happens. And it was the first thing they did, which was, looking back, really great way of figuring out the best of the bunch, was they made a 5:30 weights gym group every like 2 or 3 times a week. And I was like, okay, well, that's normal. Like, I get it. I understand it. So I go along, and then like slowly but surely, like through the whole year, there weren't like heaps of guys weren't showing up to the session or missing sessions, and there was like really barely any of us at the end of the year. And that was like your test basically to make the academy. And I was like, well, all you have to do is show up and just train hard and, continue playing well. And like all these guys that were so talented, like more talented than me, they just didn't show up. And I was like, well, far out. Like that was almost like the secret to success for me, was just like, I've just got to hang in here. Yeah. I'm going to get better. I know I'm going to get better. And, I know I'm not the most talented person in the team, but if I know the one thing I can rely on is hard work and just perseverance. I'm just going to stick at it like I've been doing it my whole life. And sure enough, like I made the academy. Another guy who's a current All Black prop, like Joe Moody, he's probably the best prop in New Zealand at the moment. He was in the pre-academy with me. Like he wasn't a superstar. He was a country boy, wasn't a superstar at school. And that's what I find, like when I look back, all of those superstars, like growing up 14, 15, 16, that's why I don't feel like it matters. All that really mattered to me during those times was that I was just ticking away slowly at my game, getting better. Yeah. And you'll find a lot of those. I mean, I know a lot of the All Blacks, like, they don't come from, they weren't often the schoolboy, like, superstar. There's those guys that are there, but the team isn't made up of 15 schoolboy stars. Yeah. There's maybe like 2 or 3, and then maybe a few decent schoolboy players, and then there's like 5 or 6 that never made any rep team, but then we're like always in the background training, Yeah.
And it's amazing. And that perseverance and resilience to carry on there. I think they're the things that people don't see, because there's so many that see the bright lights of top level rugby, soccer, basketball, and they think, I want to be there, but it's all of those steps in between. It's like you said, turning up for those 2 weight sessions a week in the gym when others just fall away because it's easier to stay at home and play on their PlayStation or whatever it may be. It's all those little steps that I think are so underestimated to ultimately make it to that top level, because then they're your habits, aren't they? It's your consistency with your training, and obviously you're developing along the way with those extra sessions as well. Yeah,
and it's still, also I'll just say, like I didn't go to a schoolboys rugby school at all. Like I actually went to the school just because we lived in the area. Like that's just the way it was, and I didn't really want to go. Like my parents asked, do I want to go to a rugby school? And I just sort of said, it doesn't bother me, because I don't feel like that's the reason. Like, sure, it might help my career, it might not, but I just want to go to this school. Like I'm happy. And it kind of showed, because like there was 2 other guys like a year ahead of me and 2 years ahead of me, Andy Ellis and Willie Hines. They both became like professional rugby players, and our school didn't really produce any rugby players. But it just showed, like, it didn't matter what school you went to, like eventually, like, I suppose like the cream rises to the top eventually. Like it doesn't have to be like you go to this school to make this team, and they showed me, like they made the Crusaders. Andy ended up he's a World Cup winning All Black, like played for till he was 30, I think he just retired, like he was 36, 37. And Willie Hines ended up playing overseas in England. He had a grandmother that was English, and he moved overseas after playing for the Crusaders, played for England for like 4 tests. Now has come back playing for the Crusaders again. Like, and all 3 of us went to Burnside High, which was it was probably known for music. Yeah. It didn't matter. We had a first 15, but it wasn't a rugby school. Yeah. And like even to this day, people ask me, what school did you go to? Like Christchurch Boys High, like, because that was the rugby school. Yeah. And I was like, no, I went to Burnside. Like it doesn't matter. Like I just felt like if I'm good enough, I'll make it. That was my mentality. Like I'll just tick away in the background. It doesn't matter if I'm not. Yeah. It was just always my vision was like, I'll get there if I deserve to. Yeah. If I'm the best, then I'll get there.
That's really refreshing to hear.